Good morning, everybody. Patty Ann here. Hang on for just a second. I'm going to start a new series for us in Design Space Basics, I'm going to call it. And I'm going to just go through the basics one by one. So instead of this video showing you the difference between weld and group and attach, this is just going to be about weld, period. I kind of think maybe you just learn one at a time and practice it a bit, that it might stick with you better and it may be easier for you. So if you notice up here on the right hand side, I have a picture of a welder. And this is what I want you to think of whenever we speak of welding. Welding is just like taking two pieces of metal and heating them so much that they become a liquid and they melt together and become one, and you can never, ever, ever take them apart again. Remember that there is no unweld button. The only time you can unweld something is if you hit the undo button and you hit it enough times to go back to before you welded. So let's get started. Let me get rid of this little fella if I can. Let's see. Okay, here we are in Cricut Design Space, and I'm going to go to New. And I'm going to replace whatever's there if there's something there already. And I'm going to come over to the Shapes tool. I'm going to pick a shape. I'm going to get a square. And there's one square. And I'm going to refer you to look at the Layers panel a lot. So it's over here to the right. Notice there's one square and it's a cut file. Okay, if I come over to the Shape tool again, click on it and get another square. Okay, look what we have on the Layers panel. We have two squares over here, just like there are two squares on the canvas. Now if we go to make this right now, it's going to cut out two squares just as we would expect. Let's cancel that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put one square on top of the other. And I'm going to make that and see what happens. Okay, once again there are two squares being cut out. They're not, even though I have them over top of each other, they're not connected together. So the way I would connect these two things together if I wanted to make them one piece is I would weld them. Now think of the welder again. He's got that really hot blowtorch or whatever it is, and he takes it and he just blows it all over this to kind of melt it together, and it melts into one piece, never to come apart again. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab all my metal here, all my pieces together. I'm going to come down here to weld and look at the little image here. It shows some things welded together. I'm going to weld it. Now watch what happens to this line right here. This is a cut line right now. Watch what happens to that line when I weld it. Okay, I'm going to click. Look what happened to the line. It's gone. And importantly, look over here in the Layers panel. There's only one image now. Let me undo that for a moment. Right now there are two boxes, right? When I highlight both of them and come down here to weld, watch what happens in the Layers panel this time. Okay, I'm going to click it right now. Click, weld. Okay, those two boxes turned into one box that was melted or welded together, and I cannot take them apart. Look, they're stuck together. I can't detach them. I can't ungroup them. They are welded together forever and ever. The only way I can unweld something is by hitting the undo button. The problem with that is if you've gone on and done a lot of other things on your canvas, you would have to keep going back to undo, undo, undo until you got to where you welded these, and then you would start again. But let's look now, since I've welded these, at what it's going to look like if I make it. Okay, you see what happens? Instead of it cutting out two separate boxes, it welded them together into one piece. Let's cancel. So now let's go back to undo these. And they're still welded together. Notice over here still says weld. So I've got to undo it again. And I've got to undo it again. Because I moved them around, I have to undo all these things that I did. There we go. We're back to 2 squares. They're no longer welded together. I'm going to change one of these squares to a different color. I'm going to change this one to red. Okay, right now they're not welded together. Let's go to make it and see what happens. It's going to cut out a black one on one piece of vinyl or one piece of cardstock and the red one on the other. Let's cancel that. Let's put one on top of the other and see what happens. They're not welded or anything. I just placed one on top of the other. Make it just like it was before. A black on one mat and a red on another. Let's cancel. Okay, now what if I weld these two things together? Now think of that welder fellow. He's got a piece of red metal and a piece of black metal, and he's going to weld those both together. When they melt and mush around together and just get melted together, they're going to melt into one color. Watch. I'm going to weld it. They both turned into black, and if I go to make it, they're both going to cut out of black. Let's cancel that. And let's undo the welding. Okay, let's see. Let's suppose we have a bunch of shapes. I'll just duplicate the red one a couple of times. And I'm going to do 2 different welding operations. This time, I'm going to weld this box, see it over here in the layers panel, and this box, these 2, I'm going to weld them together. 2 red ones, weld them together, what happens? Hey, they stayed red. What about when we make it? The black is like that, and there are 2 reds that are welded together and the single red. All right, let's cancel that. Now, let's try welding together this red one and this black one. And what's going to happen? Weld. They both turn to black. And if we go to make it, you have a welded image that's this color and a welded image that's that color. Let's see. Let's go on to get rid of these for a second. Just keep going on. Let's pretend like we want to make a tree. Maybe you're going to do the Caruso family tree on a piece of wood, and you want to make a tree that looks like an evergreen tree or a fir tree or a Christmas tree. And we come over here and we get a triangle. And we're going to duplicate that maybe 2 times. Okay, I'm going to make a little tree. Okay, once again, this is going to, well, let's go and see what happens when we say make it. It's going to cut out 3 separate triangles. Okay, let's cancel that. Now, let's assume that we go over 2 of these. 2 things are picked, and let's weld those 2 together. And what do you think is going to happen now? Think about it. What do you think is going to happen? I welded 2 together. Let's look and see. Okay, I have 2 of them welded together, and that one is still by himself. Cancel. So what the welder fellow did was he welded this piece of metal and this piece of metal together, the 2 triangles. And notice when he welded them together, they are no longer one piece, but rather, or no longer 2 pieces, but rather 1. Let me undo it for a minute. Notice I have to keep undoing. Look over here until it doesn't say weld result. There we go. Now I have the 3 triangles again. So I'm going to click this triangle, hold down my shift key and click the second triangle. So notice over here in the layers panel, I have 2 selected, and this is what I just did. I'm just redoing it for you. If you hit weld, that welded those 2 together, but didn't do anything with the 3rd one. And if we go to make it, There they are. There are the two that are welded together and the one that's by itself. But we wanted to make a tree. So what we could do right now is just grab everything else. So in other words, we're grabbing this weld result and this cut, and we're going to weld those together. And now that's exactly what we want for a tree. Maybe I want it to have a base. I can come over here and get a shape and get a square. And just place it right on top of that. And then go to make it, right? I hope you said no, because watch. This piece is still cutting by itself from this piece. What do I need to do? I need to be that welder man again and make them mush together, melted together into one piece. So I can go like this, and I can go to weld. And now if I go to make it, it is one piece. One thing to keep in mind though, I'm going to undo this to get rid of this weld result. If I want this to be brown instead, so I come up here to the color swatch, and I'm going to make it brown for the base or the trunk. And now if I weld it, what do you think is going to happen? If I weld all of this together, what's going to happen? Think about the welder with two types of materials that he's melting together. What's going to happen? Are they going to stay as separate materials? No. They're going to change the same material, same thing, weld. Yep, there it is. Let's undo it. So how would we do this? We would just have to cut it as two separate pieces like this. So I would just go to make it, and I would cut the tree out on the black and the trunk out on the brown. All right, let's get rid of these. Delete. And now let's say that maybe I want to do some cursive words. So I'm going to come to text, and I'm going to find a cursive font. And I'm going to do the Samantha font. Whoopsie. Samantha. Upright. And I'm going to make it bold. And I'll just type in my name. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the letter spacing because I want everything touching. That's the only reason why you'd really use Weld in for text, in my opinion, is when you have letters that are touching like this. All right, not everything's touching, so what I'm going to do is maybe make this one more close. There we go, pretty much touching. I'm going to advanced ungroup to letters because I want to make sure that this T is touching that one. And the A is touching. I actually want them to overlap a little bit. Okay, there we go. Now, if I just go to make this, I want to show you something that's going to happen. First of all, I can't just make it like that because it's going to come as individual letters like this. So I have to cancel that. One thing I do need to do with all of these this time is to attach them. That attaches them exactly the way I want them. But let's not get confused with attached right now. So it's going to make it. And if you'll see, I'm going to zoom in really a lot so you can see. All right. You can see this really well here. What's going to happen when this thing is cut out? Do you see this A right here and how it ends right here? And the T, the cut line, comes down like this. And this T's cut line comes down like this. And the Y comes down like this. And these, there's a cut line between these. So what this is telling us is this thing's going to be cut apart into a bunch of little letters. Each one of these letters will be individual because look at that cut line right there. It's going to cut right along there. This one's going to cut right there. That's not what we want. So when you do cursive, that's when you would use weld. Okay, let's think about the welder again. Imagine this is a big hunk of metal and he melts it all together. It's not going to be individual letters anymore. It's going to be welded or melted together. So let's weld it and see. Make it. And I'm going to show you something that's crazy about this one this time. But first, let me show you these letters. Okay, let's go into where the N's were. Notice what's going to happen here. There's no cut line between the A and the N. There's no cut line between this N and N. There is no cut line between the A and the T, between the T and the T. And notice that it's just going to cut like totally one long name. However, something happened right here if you'll notice. And I'm going to show you how to fix that. So let's cancel. And I've got to unweld it. Now remember, there is no unweld button. All I can do is undo until I come back to where it's not welded anymore. Now what that little thing tells me is that this A, the part that's closed in, is too close to something else. So I'm thinking that maybe the Y, I need to unflatten that. Do you see I can't do anything yet? Or detach that. Remember I attached it, I need to detach it. Okay, now I'm going to grab all of this and I'm just going to move it over a little bit. And I'm going to move this over a little tiny bit too. And this, I just saw that I wanted to do that. All right, let's see if this helps. If I click all this and I go to weld. Okay, that fixed it. So if I go to make it, now the A is no longer filled in. It was too close before. Okay, if we were to get a font like the Extreme font, the Little League one that I like so well, and we typed in the word weld. Okay, this word right here, there is no reason to weld this together, because if we go to make it, it's going to cut each letter, and let's zoom in, you know, as one piece, right? So that's not necessary to weld those, because if I weld them, it's going to be the same thing. The only difference is when I welded them, and you'll notice, I'll show you this in a second, they're the same way. What happened when I welded them though, was that since this was hidden, there's another layer here. Look at this. Since that layer was hidden, it's welded out of it. But let's try something else for a second. Let's ungroup these letters and let's make it so, well, let's see, ungroup. Okay, let's make it so they touch each other, that they're overlapping. Okay, and of course what I would do is I would select all of these and say align bottom, so they're nice and neat. And let's say I'm going to make these guys just as they are. Of course, if I want them to stay exactly like this and I'm not welding them, I would need to attach them. But we're really not going over that. This is just so I can show you something. So let's look now at these letters. Zoom in. And if they're touching, look what's going to happen. They're still going to cut as individual letters, right? They're going to cut out of each other. Look at this. That's going to cut out like that, and that D is going to get cut into there. And that's not what we want. I wanted them cut as one whole piece. So let's cancel this. And now if I go back here and I do click on weld and I go to make it, let's look and see what's different. All right. So again, think of the welder. He had a big hunk of W metal, a big hunk of E metal, and an L and a D. And he had them touching each other. So when he put his blowtorch on there, they all melted together into one piece, and you can't take them apart. They're not going to cut individually because they aren't individual anymore. They are one piece. Cancel. Now we can move this around like this. And suppose I add some more things to this. a couple of shapes and things, and another shape. And then suppose I decide that I don't want that welded together. Again, like I've said before, there is no unweld button like the ungroup button or the detach. Okay, what I would have to do is I have to use the undo arrow again and again and again and again. Okay, look up here in the panel, in the layers panel. It still shows that this stuff is welded. So I have to continue hitting the undo button. Aha! Finally, I'm back to where it's unwelded. And of course, I can detach it if I want to. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in happy birthday. And I'm going to make this as if it's all together so that I can make a sign with this on it. So what I would do first is fix the letter spacing, because this is cursive and I want them all to be touching so that I can make them all go together. And now I'm going to ungroup to lines, because this line here I still want to change the letter spacing on it some. Okay, now it looks like I'm going to have to ungroup it to letters. So I'm going to move the H over so it's touching, and then move the P over. There's happy. And now I'm going to move the B. Oops, I've got to ungroup these, advanced, ungroup to letters. And now I'm going to take the I, move it over. Actually, I think I'll take the T over that way, the R over that way. Okay, so there's happy birthday. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and group the word birthday together and group the word happy together. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring happy down here and make it touch in some places, wherever I think I kind of like it. Okay, so that looks pretty good. It looks like the D, well, let me zoom in a little bit so I can see for sure. I'm using this button down here in the lower left-hand corner and clicking on it to make it larger. Okay, yeah, that looks great. Looks like some of those are touching. So this is going to cut out all together in one piece. So watch. Let's go to make it, and I'm not quite done yet, and you'll see why. Look at that mess. That is not good. So I'm going to cancel it. So one of the things I can do is I can attach it like I've shown you before, but then I'll still have these cuts in between the letters. So let me show you again. If you just were to attach it, and then we go to make it, let's zoom in and look at these and see what we've got. All right, let's see. We got that issue again, right? There's a cut line right here between the R and the T. There's a cut line between the T and the H, in between the H and the D. Each one of these letters is going to be an individual letter. We don't want that. Let's really concentrate on, let's say, the cut line between the A and the P up here. And let's see what happens when we weld it. When we get out our welder's torch and we weld it or melt it together, let's see what happens. So I'm going to grab all this again, and I'm going to say weld it with my torch. And now I'm going to come over here to make it. Uh-oh, I saw the P got filled in. Did you see that? Let me show you. Okay. If we look in between these letters, they are really good. There's no lines cutting them off. It'll cut as one continuous thing. But we do have an issue with the P. So let's cancel this. All right, let's look at this. We've got to undo it to unweld it. Let's see what we've got going on here. We need to detach it because we had attached it at one point. I'm going to move this P over. Oh, I've got to ungroup it. I'm going to move this P over just a little bit, and then this one a little tiny bit. And the Y should be touching. And let's see. There we go. Okay, that looks good. Now let's try it again. Let's see what happens when we go like this and we weld. That fixed it. So that's perfect. So now if we go to make it, once again, if I zoom in, there will be no cut lines between these letters. They're going to cut out as one big piece. And as a matter of fact, happy is going to be connected to birthday right here, and right here. Okay, cancel. That pretty much sums it up. I think that that will help you to remember, if you could just remember that when you're welding, if you could think of a welder, he's melting things together. These letters are all melted together. They are not individual letters anymore. You cannot take them apart. You cannot ungroup them or unattach them or anything else. The only way to get them apart is to use the undo button and go back enough so that they're no longer welded together. So again, welding is used. It removes the overlapping areas and it creates one single image that's all connected. This is now one single image all connected. Okay, so I hope this helps. If you like this video, or if it did help you, please give me a thumbs up and share it, and hit the little bell in the subscribe area because you'll be alerted to when I have new videos posted. Also, be sure to join our Facebook group. There's a link down below, as well as affiliate links that I have of some of my products that I use and I like. And if you click on them, if you're in the market to buy something, I get a little tiny commission, and it helps me to be able to continue making more videos so that I have some supplies to use to show you. So again, thank you very much for joining me. See you guys.